Let's bring in national correspondent for New York Magazine, Gabe DeBenedetti. And Gabe is out with a new feature, a cover feature for New York Magazine this morning about his recent time inside the Biden campaign's re-election headquarters. The piece is entitled "The Alarming Calm of the Biden Campaign." And Gabe writes in part this: with less than a year until the 2024 vote, there is a glaring cognitive split at the top of the Democratic Party, while commentators and many strategists are aghast at Biden's polling slide and desperate to see a course correction. The president's aides at the White House and at re-election headquarters give every indication that they consider the election very much under control. To many outside this bubble of confidence, Biden's position looks as feeble as ever. His job approval rating is hovering below 40%, lower than any president in recent memory at this point in his first term. Many young voters appear to be revolting against him, reading his administration's support for Israel as a lack of concern for the mounting civilian death toll in Gaza. There are a slew of encouraging reports about the economy, but voters don't seem to be giving Biden any credit. Instead, they're just pissed off that everything costs a lot more than it used to. His top advisors believe that the political media complex is repeating all its mistakes of 2019 in underestimating Biden and misunderstanding just how low Trump has sunk in the voters' estimation. They're convinced Biden will rebound in popularity as the election gets closer and its stakes become apparent to the average voter.
Tell me, you look at polls over the weekend, Joe Biden's numbers are collapsing with young voters. He's doing poorly among black men. He's doing poorly among other people of color. If you look historically, the numbers, his votes support is slipping in the swing states. What is and all the while he's keeping all the people that ran his campaign in 2020 inside the White House. What does the Biden team know that nobody else knows?
Yeah, well, you've asked a good question there, but I think, the central article of faith that I heard over and over for the last 6 months, really, as I've been asking this question, which is what is the plan here, is that voters just aren't really paying attention in the way that they're going to a year from now when it actually comes time to vote, or 11 months from now. The point that I heard repeated over and over again is that once real Americans, real people who are currently not thinking about politics at all, once they lock into the fact that this is going to be another election where Donald Trump is on the ballot, everything is going to change. That's going to change for young voters. It's going to change for voters of color. It's going to change for really the Biden coalition. Now, I heard this over and over while Biden's numbers were tanking, to make a long story short, and not to sugarcoat it. But their argument is that if you look at polls, if you look at focus groups, real people who, are the people who vote in elections simply aren't. It's not just that they're not paying attention yet. They don't even understand that Trump is going to come back in a year on the ballot, and that the major threat is there. So that's why the Biden campaign has started keying in on Trump more, talking about what a second term would look like. But they've also made the point to me over and over that, listen, while the Republican Party is going through its mess all over the country right now, but especially, in Palm Beach, where Vaughn was just giving that great report around Trump, the Biden campaign has been building up in Wilmington. They've got this pretty big infrastructure in Delaware being built sort of so that they can really hit the ground running in the new year. It's all based on the idea that people are going to start paying attention in a new way. So we'll find out pretty soon.
Yeah, the Biden campaign really focused on fundraising at the moment. Gabe, you in your piece, you talked to one senior Biden aide who says that if they do have a regret, if things go poorly here, the regret was they didn't go negative on Trump sooner. In fact, right here, I'll read the quote. "If we look back on this period with regret, it's because we didn't spend this time going after Trump." And that refers to this past summer where they were really pushing Bidenomics. They were pushing, a campaign to accentuate the president's positives rather than drawing that contrast. We have seen that shift, but people that Democrats you're talking to, do they think that shift came soon enough? And do you think that shift has come hard enough?
Yeah, it's a great question. Some people, of course, don't think it came soon enough at all and are already saying, well, if, again, like I said in the story, if it turns out that Biden loses, it's because they didn't go after Trump quick enough. But there's been this belief among many strategists, but particular pollsters within the party, who found early on that Biden's numbers do look better when you present it as a contrast, when you present this not as just, do you approve of Biden, but do you approve of Biden in relation to Trump? So in focus groups, in polls with their base voters, you found very frequently, Biden's numbers do go up there. We'll see if that turns out to be true.
And we know Biden himself, Elise, is fond of saying, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. That alternative being Donald Trump.
Well, and now they seem to be doing that a bit more, but by taking the focus away from Biden's record, which Bidenomics really went over like a lead balloon. But what was the debate? Can you talk about the debate within the campaign over making it a campaign against Trump versus a campaign of here's what we've done the last 4 years?
Well, a big part of it was always that they believed that there was going to be a Republican primary going on. And this is a lot of people around Biden that was going to be hitting Trump a little bit more than it really is. So for a long time, they figured, let's up the president's approval ratings and make sure that we talk about his record. Now, within the Biden campaign, they hate the idea and the whole Biden operation that you got to choose one or the other here. Biden himself always says, look at the results of the midterms. When, people said to him, it's a distraction to talk about democracy. It's a distraction to talk about Trump. We should just be talking about the economy. And then he went out there, talked about democracy just before the elections, and then Democrats overperformed. So their view is we're going to keep pushing Bidenomics. He's going to still be out there doing this stuff. But if you look at all their ads, if you look at the communications that they're sending out to reporters, it's Trump, Trump, Trump. So there's really, two different paths that they're going down here. And they believe that there has to be.
Gabe, is there a sense among the Biden campaign that they're just not going to pay attention to their base support? I understand they feel the voters are going to show up, that they're not paying attention.
Sure.
But base voters are paying attention now, and influences of young people, of blacks, of Latinos, of women. If they turn them off, those are the people that can really weigh in against them later because they're saying these people are not sincere. Don't they risk that because they're going to need that core when they feel that people are starting to pay attention?
So this is where I think things get really interesting because you've brought up a dynamic that they're very aware of, but it's not totally obvious how to deal with it. But the way that they're thinking about this is that there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we're not seeing. And I tried to report about this a little bit in the piece. They do have an operation to work with a lot of these influencers and people who are big communicators in different communities that can reach people much better than they can from Wilmington. But beyond that, they have been starting these organizing pilots in Arizona and Wisconsin, hiring up there. And those are focused on Phoenix, Madison, and Milwaukee, specifically on Latino voters, young voters, and black voters in Milwaukee. And the idea there is to really make sure that they understand how to shore up the base first before they pivot over to the suburban white voters, for example, that they ended up going for last time. So the idea is, we're learning about this now. In the new year, that's going to expand, I believe, to the other 5 big swing states that they seem to be focusing on right now.
National correspondent for New York Magazine, Gabe DeBenedetti, thank you very much for your reporting and insight this morning.